Hey guys, and welcome back to PC Tech. Now, today I'm installing Windows 10 on a rather old system, and as you might recall, it is the computer that I actually bought off Ricardo for $1. And when you do install Windows 10 or actually any operating system from Windows 7 up to Windows 10 on an older computer, you may want to consider some things, actually some prep work before you do actually install the operating system, because do keep in mind, when you're dealing with a platform that is about 10 years old, then you might get into some hurdles, especially because of some BIOS options that are let's say not tweaked the most optimal way for installing Windows 10 on a faster hard drive or SSD, as I'm actually using a 500 gigabyte SSD, and there is specifically one option that you want to change in the BIOS before you do so. And also, before you actually do any BIOS modification on an older motherboard, you also want to make sure that you change the battery, that you replace the battery on the motherboard, because keep in mind it is a 10-year-old battery and it might have drained after such long time of service. So I just want to show you where you can actually find the battery on the motherboard and what kind of battery it is. It is actually very straightforward. And the thing you want to do first is make sure that the power supply is turned off. So they usually have a switch, or if they don't have a switch, you just remove the power cord to the power supply and make sure that no LEDs are lit on the motherboard, so you know that there is no power going through the motherboard. Alright, in my case, the battery can be found right next to the PCI Express slot, on the upper slot of the graphics card, right here. And you remove the battery by just pressing this little latch to the outside, and the battery sometimes is kind of a little bit stuck, but the battery will usually jump out as it did right here, and then you can remove it with your finger or with a screwdriver. It really depends on where the motherboard is. Sometimes it is easier by using a screwdriver, and now it just fell under the GPU. So once you have removed the battery, you can actually see the type of battery that is being used on motherboards, and it is the same piece like on all motherboards. So you can actually buy a set of CR2032, or actually I've also been using 3020, 2020 or something like that. As long as the size is right and as long as the voltage is right, 3 volts, you'll be golden. So I actually bought replacement batteries like this one, and they're rather cheap. You can actually buy them also off AliExpress if you want to, but you can also buy them at grocery stores, and yeah, it just doesn't matter actually. So we will just put this battery now into the motherboard, and then we can start tweaking the BIOS. Okay, we are right now into the BIOS, and basically with all motherboards you will get into the BIOS by pressing the delete key on your motherboard, which is this one. Sometimes you can find them up here, or they're usually on the right side of your keyboard. Press the delete key, and if it doesn't work with the delete key, you can type in your motherboard part on the internet and search for the shortcut for the BIOS. So once you are into the BIOS, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because BIOSes, they aren't all built the same way, and you might find some options on a different spot. And I'm using a Gigabyte BIOS, and it also isn't UEFI, and if it is UEFI you actually don't have to tweak anything, because the SATA controller will be tweaked the right way. So I'm actually going to integrated peripherals. And when I'm at SATA RAID AHCI mode, I will switch from disable to AHCI, then SATA port 0 to 3 native mode. I will go to enable, USB controller, enable, enable. USB keyboard support, enable, USB mouse support, enable, legacy USB storage detect, enable. Then this one, I don't use them anymore, they are really old standards. And then, very important, onboard SATA and IDE controller mode. You will have to change this to AHCI. Otherwise, you will run your SSD over the IDE setting, and it will slow down your system significantly. Because IDE is really old, and you really don't want to run your SSD with IDE on. So change this to AHCI, and yeah, you should be golden by this time. Then you will just go over to exit, save and exit setup, press the Y key, and yeah, you should be ready to install Windows 10, and I will guide you through this step. So the next step, you want to make sure that you have an install media with the Windows ISO image on it, and you can get the Windows 10 ISO image via the Microsoft web page by typing in Media Creation Tool, and it is actually a little software where you can download the Windows 10 ISO image. And you can choose whether you want to mount the image on a USB flash drive, as I have right here, or whether you want to burn the ISO image onto a DVD drive. So I have a USB flash drive right here. It is an 8 gig variant. You need an 8 gig variant. I think 4 gig would be too small, but don't quote me on that. So with 8 gig you will be fine, and you just plug this thing right into your motherboard I/O, or actually on the front side of your case. It really depends on where you have the USB plugs. So I will just show you where I do install my USB flash drive. And I will choose just one of the USB ports on a motherboard that isn't located yet. So the next step, you want to choose on what device you actually want to boot your system. And now again, it really depends on your motherboard. I'm using a Gigabyte board, and when you're pressing the F12 key on your keyboard, your motherboard will start into the boot menu, and when you're using an ASUS board, you want to press F8, as F8 is the shortcut for the boot menu. I'm on Gigabyte, so it is F12. On ASUS, you will actually get a more, let's say, easier version of the boot menu, where you can just simply choose what drive you want to boot your system off. So on ASUS, it would just be the USB drive. So I will go to hard disk, and it isn't here right now. So I will see where it is. Alright, we're back at another location. There is my my SSD and my boot storage. As I just realized, I read some threads on forums. Gigabyte boards are notorious for issues with USB boot devices. I even tried to flash the BIOS and I had no chance. So yeah, I'm going another route that I've used a few times, and I'm just gonna install the operating system on another computer to this SSD, and then I will just swap the drive out again and put it into my system upstairs, the Gigabyte system. And then, yeah, with all the files installed, it should just boot up fine on this SSD. Yeah, I really wish that there would be an easier solution for me, but this is actually the easiest one right now. So I will just go ahead, unplug these cables from the SSD that is installed in this computer, also from the hard drive, don't want this one detected, and plug in my SSD. Yeah, then start installing Windows 10 on this SSD. It is really yeah, a janky solution, but I just couldn't help myself with another one. So yeah, that's the way I will go, but I will still have to update the BIOS on this Gigabyte board, and yeah, I don't know, man. It will be a tough, yeah, a tough task. So yeah. As I mentioned, on ASUS boards, you press the F8 key and you will get this sort of boot selection at the startup, and then you just choose the generic, not the UEFI generic, just a generic, and your system will boot into the USB flash drive, and it will greet you with this Microsoft logo. And yeah, then we'll go through the installation steps of Windows 10. So after a few seconds, you should get this screen where you choose your install language and the keyboard and the other time. And I'm in Switzerland, so I choose Switzerland, German Switzerland, and then you install the operating system. There are 1 or 2 steps that I just want to show you. And here it will ask you the key, and you will just go to I don't have a key, because maybe your motherboard has already been activated with a Windows 10 Pro key by the previous owner, and if it hadn't, you will just buy a key for cheap. Just go for no key, choose Windows 10 Pro. That's usually the version I choose, and I go next. Then yes, I accept. Then I go this one, advanced. I create a new boot drive. That's the SSD I'm using. We'll go to next, and then Windows will copy all the files onto this SSD, and once it is finished, so once it goes to action, yeah, it is in German, Aktion wird abgeschlossen, or yeah, I mean ending the installation, and then it will do a reboot. And when it does the reboot, you do want to turn off this computer and then remove the SSD and install it into the other computer, and yeah, it will just go through the process just fine. And yeah, I will see you then upstairs again at my Gigabyte board with the stupid BIOS. Alright, I'm back at booting Windows on this computer. It just worked fine. It usually is my last solution that I go with, just installing the Windows let's say files on the SSD by using another computer, and then do the rest of the installation where it goes through all the drivers and stuff on the actual computer itself. Sometimes you have some issues with OEM motherboards where it just doesn't want to boot off USB flash drives. So yeah, I will just go this route, and it has always worked out this far. But I'll still have to update the BIOS, because I also realized that it somehow only detects 4 gigs of DDR2 memory, even though I'm having 8 gigabytes installed. So there is something weird going on with this BIOS, and it also might be a very early revision of this BIOS on this motherboard. So we'll see. So, and if all goes well, you will be greeted with this screen. You will go for personal usage. You are probably not an organization. Then I always go for an offline account. No, I don't want to use this type of gamer, or no, I actually go for overclocker. I go further. No keyword, password actually. Then it will ask you all these settings. I always go for I don't want to use it. No, nope, not interested. See you later. Nope, no. And then your computer will begin to start up and actually initialize some of the drivers. Most of the drivers will be ready once you will get the Windows screen, except for the graphics card. Very often you will have to install the graphics card driver manually or by using the Windows Device Manager, where you can use Windows Update to install your graphics card drivers. And I usually go this route. Maybe you won't get the most recent driver revision, but it is a good starting point if you just wanted to install like all your basic software and then deal with some more revised drivers. Well, actually, oh yeah, it will probably take a little while until I get the screen. Okay, so just got onto the screen and you can see down in the bottom that LAN is okay. Then audio should be fine too. And when I go to Device Manager or Device Manager or Geräte Manager in German, you'll see that at graphics card you will usually have standard Microsoft drivers, but my installation actually detected the GeForce GT 625, so that's nice. So everything should be ready to go, and I will now install all the stuff that I will need for tweaking my system. And yeah, as you can see here, it only detects 4 GB of memory. So yeah, I will have to do something about that. But that's basically how you do install your Windows. And when you want to activate your Windows, you just go here to activate Windows, and you will need a key that you can purchase online. I usually purchase them for around 15 bucks. Yeah, and they always worked out for me. Yeah, and I will see you in the next video where I will actually start overclocking the system a little bit with the air cooler. I still don't have the case for my setup, but I will receive it I think next week, and I will start building my system then and also tweak the parts a little bit more. Yeah, and I will see you in the next videos. Bye.